Yeah, when we're good.
We're good.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. For the record, my name is Jonathan Cooper, House Rep, Bennington 1. Despite other pronunciations on the floor, it's Pownell. And it's nice to see you all here today. I'd like to thank you all as co-sponsors for this bill for lending your support to it. And I'd like to thank the committee's leadership for bringing it here to agriculture, because you can look at this bill through a lot of different lenses. In years past, this bill has been seen primarily through a human services lens, which is committee of jurisdiction, you might think, for 18 VSA. You can look at it through a commerce economic development lens, through a ways and means lens. But I believe it makes a lot of sense here from the agricultural lens, because this is a food resilience bill. And we tried to add language to 401, which is a bill that proposes to exempt food manufacturing establishments with gross annual receipts of less than $30,000 from licensing fees and inspections. This is extended to commercial bakeries, commercial non-bakeries, and residential and home bakeries. We look at the legislative intent in this bill from that food resilience lens, because food resilience is something that the General Assembly has prioritized. It's something that enhances our state's security from external shocks. It enhances our state's economy, retaining dollars, and sort of preventing leakage to the external economies of the United States. And it enhances our community because food is about the time it takes to make it, the time it takes to consume it, and the time between producer and consumer. And we really want to see more Vermonters occupying both of those roles as producers and consumers. So existing caps on that exemption from licensing and from inspection is $10,000 for commercial enterprises and $6,250 for home bakeries, and that's at $125 per week average. Ted Barnett was just in here, and he and I had a chance to chat a week or two ago about what the impact to the state might be if we were to make an adjustment. We're under 10K. If we expanded that exemption to 30,000, what might be the impacts? We don't know exactly, because from a fees perspective, which is Mr. Barnett's jurisdiction, the band is 10,000 to 50,000. That's the existing fee structure for commercial activities. And we don't know which ones are at 12,000, which ones are at 45,000, but it's about 100 establishments. It yields about $20,000 a year in fees to the state. And for home bakeries, the threshold 6,250 per year. About 100 home bakeries are above that within that next tier, and they yield about $10,000 a year in fees. So we're talking about a de minimis hit for ways and means to absorb of about $30,000 a year. We went back over a couple fiscal years, and while there's some variation year on year, that's the trend. That's the sort of the average. Again, we don't know exactly how many are in that 40 to 50 range. We're really looking at adjusting that 10 to 30 portion. And our reasoning there is that this allows more people to sort of participate without getting into sort of the extras that come along with licensing and inspection. And participants include sole proprietors, women, new Americans, people that would like to have more opportunities to contribute to our economy, and who may be able to do so out of their own home or someplace that's nearby throughout our state. I think the breadth of the co-sponsors come from our largest city, comes from the chair of our rural caucus. We see people across the state who could feel the relevance of this. I did want to add that we had reached out to Food and Lodging for some of their inspection data. Brendan Atwood connected us with some people a little closer to the ground with that data collection. And this was about a week and a half ago, and they said they'd need until March 10th to procure the data in terms of violations and the severity of violations among those that might be freed from inspections or released from the inspection burden with this proposed legislation. I look forward to Ms. McClynn's opportunity to go through it line by line. I think there are a few adjustments that we may wish to make to some of the language in here, and that's something that we can address at the appropriate time. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them now. And thank you.
Sean.
Yeah, I'm wondering what with the current number of 10,000, is that like you have 10,000 in sales period or 10,000 that is cleared after you deduct the cost of the products that you're selling?
It's 10,000 in annual receipts. So I believe that it does not account for gross income. So it does not account for your expenditures and expenses. And
Okay.
another rationale for this adjustment is that those have been on the books for a number of years now. Costs have only gone up. And to be honest, inflationary adjustments, which is an economy-wide metric,
Yeah.
really softens what we're seeing in the food sector. And I think we've been
Right.
talking about that for years now.
Right, that seems just kind of ridiculous, actually, if you think about it. I mean, like, we're trying to get more vendors to come and do our farmer's market in Bellows Falls, and
Right.
I mean, how much work are you supposed to put in and not make a profit off it, you know? I mean, like.
And that does feel like a good opportunity to make this adjustment, knowing if it does in fact, enter into law, that we would like to see more of this, and we're moving some pieces around so that you have more room to do your best work.
So fundamentally, the bill would, we have an existing dollar amount that we're going to be changing, and a couple of different dollar amounts going to be changing. And if you currently, if you're below that dollar amount, you don't have to be licensed. So you don't have to pay for the license. And you talked a little bit about what that might mean to the revenue of the state, not very much impact globally. But from the perspective of the owner of the business, it's not just that you don't have to pay for the license, but you don't have to be, what other impacts would there be?
So for the commercial enterprises, there's an inspection that goes along with that. And so there's that time, that coordination, those logistics is also sort of taken off of your plate, so to speak. So there's an area where we wanted to hear from the agency health to understand just where they're seeing their thoughts about public health and risk exposure, which has sort of been at the forefront of their concerns. So to hear more about that, I'm looking forward to seeing that information.
Representative Lipsky.
Jonathan, thank you. First question is, you're really talking about baked goods
Mhm.
or baked products?
For the home kitchens,
Yes.
yes.
And following up on Representative Bosland's question, do you see that farmers markets are a likely or a primary outlet for these small home kitchen sales?
I believe farmers markets, village,
Local general store?
yes, that seems the neatest, cleanest fit. That's where people gather, and at those events or at those central locations. If I may add on to that, one of the elements we also wanted to focus on from a public health sort of acknowledgement is that baked goods present a different risk profile from chicken salad or, so those kinds of, those kitchen elements. And so we wanted to, an acknowledgement of the realities of, moving food, keeping it, where it needs to be refrigerated, sort of removing that from sort of the baked element. That seemed to be an important acknowledgement to make to some of the concerns from the agency. And frankly, if we'd gone up to 50, that would have made Vermont one of the most permissive states in the union at around $50,000. So we wanted to, which was last year's iteration of this bill. So we thought to modify that a little bit in recognition of those concerns.
Jonathan, this doesn't catch up, say, the general stores that are making baked goods then, does it?
Sorry, can you catch up?
It's for home bakeries, right? So general stores that make cider donuts and blueberry muffins, et cetera.
Commercial bakeries as well. So yeah, so I would think that they'd be included in this legislation.
It's basically anything that would be under the dollar value that you're putting in here would not have to pay certain fees or be under inspection.
Yeah, so whether it's a bakery or non-bakery, commercial food manufacturing in the clear, and then For home kitchens, it's been limited to bakeries, and that's predominantly flour, but not necessarily wheat flour. You can be flexible with the flours.
Ancient grains.
Spelt.
Great.
Would you be open to putting language in there to have the value adjust with inflation? So that we're not revisiting this 10 years from now?
That is I think that makes sense to me personally. I'd be curious to hear how JFO, thinks about those sort of level sets. I just don't know enough about it, but I wouldn't view that as problematic from my perspective at all.
Anything else?
Yes, just what about, there are certain places that do like, Friday night pizzas. Is that home, is that commercial? Where does that fall into?
I wish I could say for sure. I think it'd be valuable maybe to have an agency perspective on how they classify those operations.
You said you at least were in touch with the department to get data. Did you talk to them at all about their perspective on making a change?
At the initial outset, speaking with Ledge Council, they had had some conversations with their council, and the broad concern was around raising the cap, you might say, from 10 to 30 is raising the risk of exposure, and that they're not in the business of increasing public risk is their perspective. They had thought that an alternative they presented was that certain food types like candy, which present really minimal risk to the public, may be a way to start the process. But I hadn't heard much more directly since then.
And just noting that there already is an existing cap below which you don't need to be inspected. So it's just, and that if this dates back, I don't know if you were able to find out when this statute or when it was last updated, but it's been a while, I think.
In a while, the only number I know is that it was in 2015 that the fees were last adjusted, but I don't know when the 10K, 125.
Yeah.
Or
Could have been 10 years ago.
could have been more. But yeah, I think if I understand your meaning, that there was a sense of acceptable risk at that time.
Yeah.
And since then, economic conditions have more or less minimized, have lowered that risk each year,
Yeah.
Given, cost increases, et cetera. And so, yeah, this is an attempt to sort of true that up to that notion of acceptable risk from way back then.
Good. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks so much.
And we'll reach out to the health department. We'll see whether we can get some of the proprietors of businesses who would be impacted or maybe have been impacted if they've crossed that threshold. That would be particularly interesting to hear from people who are in that, right in that spot. And then I will note that, as Jonathan pointed out, the section of statute here really is the one that Human Services deals with because it's the health department. They will probably want to take a look at the bill too. And of course, Ways and Means will definitely want to take a look.
Sure.
Got numbers in it, so. Okay, good. I think we're all set. Thank you.